So, hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Barry, and today I thought I'd talk some Formula One because with Sebastian Vettel leaving Ferrari, it's the whole world of Formula One is completely wide and open. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. So, in order to help decipher what is happening in the world of Formula One, I decided to get the F1 guru himself to help explain to us, Mr. Sasha Martinengo. Sasha, how are you this morning?
Barry, I'm very, very good. I mean, it's been exciting times in the world of
Yeah,
Formula One, even though none of us, even though a wheel hasn't turned. So it's
crazy.
it's a crazy time, crazy time.
Right, so I think we need to start with the man who set all of this alight, Mr. Sebastian Vettel. Personally, I want to say that I saw it coming. I just didn't think that he'd be at Ferrari for too much longer, but I did not expect it to happen this soon.
Yeah, I must say I'm pretty disappointed in the fact that Vettel hasn't managed to re-sign for Ferrari. I think it's a very, very risky move for Ferrari to get rid of him. But the world has changed, Barry, in the last couple of months. So maybe the reset button has been set at Ferrari as well, and they're going on a completely different approach going forward.
Yeah, I mean, did you also sort of expect it with Charles Leclerc's contract being extended to 2024, I think it is. Did you sort of see that Ferrari wasn't completely committed to Sebastian Vettel as they were to Charles Leclerc?
Yeah, sort of in a way. They had to sign Leclerc on a long-term contract. They couldn't just give him 1 or 2 years. He's too young, and the way that they brought him in, they needed to give him some kind of a solid future. But as we know in the world of Formula One and just about in the world of anything, contracts are just pieces of paper, and they can be broken at any time with the right kind of conditions. You would never want to work somewhere if the people didn't want you to be there. So, I think in a way it might have, created a little bit of disharmony for Sebastian Vettel. But, Vettel went to Ferrari and he wanted to achieve something, and that was to emulate Michael Schumacher and win a world championship. And Ferrari haven't managed to give him a decent enough car to do that. Perhaps 2018 was a little bit of a chance that they had, but if you look at it really logically and just look at the power of Mercedes over the last 6 or 7 years, nobody's had a chance to beat them, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think a lot of people sort of give Vettel the flack for not being able to reach the world championship. Myself, I'm a Vettel supporter, so I'm maybe a little bit biased. But I think in many cases, Sebastian Vettel had to manage the team as well instead of, as if you look at Lewis Hamilton, where he could just go racing, he didn't have to worry about anything. What role do you think Ferrari as a team played to Vettel not being able to actually reach a world championship?
Well, you've got to go back to when these regulations changed, when Formula One decided to go into the hybrid era. And that was 2014. And Mercedes have always been a step ahead, because when they got into that phase, Mercedes somehow found some great tricks when it came to their engine, where the other teams and manufacturers couldn't really play the same game. And because there was a moratorium on those rules, all of the manufacturer teams were always going to be 1 or 2 or 3 steps behind Mercedes-Benz. It was only 2017, 2018, and a bit of 2019 that we saw the other teams coming up. Honda improved incredibly, Renault getting up to speed, and Ferrari actually even having a faster engine. But because they've been working so furiously on getting their engines up to speed, you also sometimes neglect the other parts of a Formula One car, where, it revolves around airflow and aerodynamics. So Mercedes could sit there and say, well, our engine is perfect, we don't have to worry about that, let's just focus on everything else. Plus, on top of it, they've got maybe one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Formula One racing driver in history in their team. So, you're up against some serious variables when you try to go racing against Mercedes.
Yeah, and I think arguably we can say that since the turbo hybrid era, since 2014, Vettel hasn't really, been able to gel with the car as much. If you take 2014, Daniel Ricciardo pretty much outshone him when he joined Red Bull. And do you think that maybe, and it's just an assumption, that he just hasn't been gelling with the current engines as much as he has in the past?
It's a very debatable point that, and there are a lot of people who are going out who are saying, well, Sebastian Vettel, as soon as it gets a little bit tough, then he goes running away. Don't forget, when he at Red Bull, he had won 4 world championships. He was a little bit tired and he got into a car and all of a sudden he was trying to find, the limit all of the time to try and take on Mercedes. Prior to that, he had a car underneath him that he could just go and drive, and he could even drive it at 9/10 and still beat everybody. Now all of a sudden he had a car he had to drive it at 11/10 just to try and catch the likes of Mercedes. All of a sudden a different dimension. And from there he must probably sat and said, well, now we have to try and beat Mercedes, and Red Bull haven't got the equipment. Red Bull were going through, a sort of acrimonious time with Renault. Ferrari looked the most stable, so he decided to go there. And Ferrari, unfortunately, just haven't provided a car, just as no team has managed to provide a car to Sebastian Vettel. So, Vettel, just give him the right machinery. And the guy's as good as anybody else. Don't forget, he's also one of the greatest drivers we've ever seen in Formula One.
Yeah, we'll get to that point just now. But I want to talk about Carlos Sainz because, of course, he's the man who is replacing Sebastian at Ferrari. So do you think that was the wise choice? I know on your video that you did on your Facebook, you said that it's a really risky strategy for Ferrari to have 2 very young drivers to carry the team forward.
Well, look at it. I mean, Carlos Sainz is a terrific racing driver. We saw him, in McLaren have some great races, but he hasn't won anything as yet. So that also, it's a bit of a problem. Going to a team like Ferrari is an incredibly difficult proposition for any racing driver. The amount of pressure that gets put on you, never mind just from the Italian media, but worldwide. I mean, Ferrari is that big a team and entity that you are going to have huge amounts of pressure. So, of course, if somebody knocks on your door, Barrie, and says, listen, come to Ferrari, you're really going to look at it. You just have to go back in the past and look at what happened with Jean Alesi. So Carlos Sainz, I think it's risky for him and it's risky for Ferrari. Why didn't they offer Carlos Sainz a 4-year deal until 2014, the same as Charles Leclerc? They've given him a 2-year deal. And basically the way Mattia Binotto has come out and explained it, he's basically sat there and said, Carlos Sainz is our number 2. Number 2, when you're only 20, I don't even know how old, I think he's only 23 years old, is a very, very difficult pill to swallow. However, put the 2 guys in the car, we all think or all believe that Charles Leclerc is going to be quicker than Carlos Sainz. It might turn out the other way around.
Yeah. And so considering, say, you were the head at Ferrari, you had the veto vote to say who's going to be in this team. If you could choose anybody that was currently available or who would want to switch at the moment, who would you put alongside Charles Leclerc?
I would have taken Lewis Hamilton. I would have offered him whatever it was that he wanted and taken him. Don't forget, they were paying Vettel basically the same amount of money that Mercedes is paying Lewis Hamilton. I would have gone straight there and said, listen, Lewis, you've got 6 world championships. We can give you the right machinery over the next couple of seasons. We need your expertise. And the one thing about Lewis Hamilton is he knows how to win. He's such a clever strategist. And I think he would have been the perfect person to take to Ferrari. But I mean, that's maybe just a little bit of not wishful thinking, but maybe a little bit too far out of reach. I wouldn't have gotten rid of Sebastian Vettel as yet. The season hasn't even started, Barrie. We don't know what the cars are going to be like. In preseason testing, the Ferrari didn't look good at all, but we don't know if they were sandbagging, but it didn't look good. So you sit there and go, well, if you look at all of the data that they had, you sit and say, well, listen, our boys are going to struggle as it is. Why get rid of it? Try and build up the team again.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Well, speaking of wishful thinking, the chances are slim, but the chances are there that Sebastian Vettel might be able to join Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. And I saw you also getting very excited at the notion that actually might happen on your video that you did. So I really, really want it to happen as well.
Yeah, it would be a dream team. You know, you've got to go back to Prost and Senna, you know, where you had two unbelievable world champions in the same team fighting against each other. Lewis Hamilton, yes, would have an edge over Sebastian Vettel in Mercedes. He's been there for 6 or 7 years already. He knows exactly how that team works. The team works brilliantly around him. But imagine just in the world of Formula One and the world of sport that you've got Vettel and Hamilton in the same team. I think it would be spectacular. And it could happen, you know, Barrie, it could happen. There's a massive opening at Renault. Renault need a top driver to come into that team. I cannot see them going for two young drivers. They've only got Esteban Ocon there now because Daniel Ricciardo is leaving to go to McLaren. So what do? And a possible replacement there would be Valtteri Bottas. You know, Bottas is a proven race winner and a brilliant racing driver. His only problem, Bottas, is he's up against Lewis Hamilton. And does he want that for the rest of his life? You know, maybe go in and lead a team.
So I don't know what your views are on this, but with this whole issue of Vettel and Hamilton maybe joining together, I think one of the one sticking point that people may have is that you might have a Nico Rosberg Lewis Hamilton situation where they clash and then things sort of start to unravel a bit. What do you think that might happen if Vettel would go to Mercedes?
I think it would be terrific if they clash. I mean, everybody's just too buddy in Formula One at the moment. Everyone's just, my mate over here, my mate over there. Where's the rivalries? You know, where's Niki Lauda against James Hunt? Where's Schumacher versus Hakkinen and Schumacher versus Alonso and Prost versus Senna? Where those proper rivalries? Now everybody's just going, oh well, let's see what we can do. The only person. If Vettel had to go there, of course they won't be the best of friends. Lewis Hamilton isn't the best of friends with anybody. That's how you become a champion. Michael Schumacher was not best of friends with Felipe Massa or Rubens Barrichello or Eddie Irvine. He went there to go and do his job. That's what makes a champion. So, you know, go in there and let them bash their heads against each other, but you know, make sure that they go racing on the track as hard as they can. And if you know, give Vettel a car that he knows that he's comfortable and confident that he can drive 10 tenths at it and it's not going to let him down, I tell you, you see a different kind of Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, it's just, for me, it's become a thing in Formula One where teams have their number one driver and then the person who's next to them is, if you take Bottas and Hamilton, for example, he's very submissive in the way that he goes about his business. And I think that, I don't know what you think, but I think it's not very exciting to have a number one driver and number two who's just there to support the number one driver.
Barrie, yeah, let me unfortunately blow your bubble there. Unfortunately, number one and number two drivers have been since the start of motor racing, and it's never ever going to stop. As much as any team can sit there and say that, oh no, our drivers are on equal this, equal that. No, they're not. They get told what to do and how to do it, and if somebody starts getting better than the other one, they're going to favor that, and that's how motor racing works. Not only Formula One, in any form of motor racing. So you have to be prepared for it. So after a few races, if you're not up to scratch and your teammates beating you, more than likely from there you're going to have to just be Mr. Two and try and assist the team to achieve their objectives. Don't forget, it is a team sport.
Very true, very true. So let's move on to the other man who's switching teams, Mr. Daniel Ricciardo. Personally, I'm very much looking forward to the Lando Norris Ricciardo era at McLaren, especially considering they're going back to Mercedes engine. Do you think something really good can happen over there?
Yeah, listen, number one, I think it's going to be hysterical. The two of them are both very, very funny guys. Norris and Ricciardo at every press conference are two real clowns, but they are two very, very good racing drivers as well. And I think Danny Ricciardo, this could revive his career. You know, he left Red Bull and went to Renault with high expectations. Renault have not provided him with machinery that has been able to showcast or his talent. So, you know, this is terrific news. McLaren are very much on and up. They've got a very solid management team, which is great to see. We haven't seen this for many, many years. Alexander Seidel managing the team, ex-Porsche man, Zach Brown is a very, very good negotiator. So, and then, of course, getting Mercedes power as well. McLaren are definitely on their way back, and I think this is a great move for Danny Ricciardo. And yeah, I think it's going to be terrific to see the two of them racing against each other. Norris has shown that on the track he really, really can deliver. And don't forget, he's still very, very young, so he'll learn from Ricciardo, but he'll push Ricciardo as well. And I think that's what Danny Ricciardo needs. He needs someone to push him. And then he can show, as we saw with Red Bull, you know, he pushed Vettel pushed him, and he got a slightly upper hand. So, yeah, I think it's a great move for McLaren and of course, for Ricciardo.
Yeah, and speaking of Renault, you know, obviously they're not as, you know, as high up as they would like to be. Where do you think the problem is with Renault? Do you think it's maybe Cyril Abiteboul who's maybe not leading the team as well as he's supposed to? What do you think's going on over there?
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about this for the last season and a half. Mine is just a little bit of speculation, but ever since Renault had and Nissan had the huge problems with their chairman, Carlos Ghosn. Carlos Ghosn was a massive fan and advocate of the Formula One part of Renault. So since he's been gone, I don't know if perhaps they've closed the hosepipe a little bit. There's not enough funding that they are receiving and need for them to be a top team. And they don't forget, it's a manufacturer team. You know, you want Renault right up at the top there. You know, you want Mercedes versus Renault versus Ferrari. And then, of course, your Red Bulls and your McLarens and those teams. But I'm not entirely sure what has gone wrong with Renault. They paid huge money to get Danny Ricciardo. So on one side, I'm saying, is there a money problem? On the other side, I'm saying there isn't a money problem because they managed to pay that huge amount of money. So you've got to look within the Renault Formula One team. And is Cyril the right person for them to guide them? We've seen him get very hot-headed with Christian Horner in the past when it came to the split between Red Bull and Renault. He also has come out with some pretty I wouldn't say, but pretty nasty comments about Danny leaving the team. So maybe that's where the problem is, Barry, but they're not delivering on what they should as an organization like Renault. So, but I still have faith. I love the team. I've always loved the brand as well. So I believe Renault are in for the long haul. Let's hope. And they'll come right, but perhaps maybe internally they need to make one or two changes.
Yeah, and you bring an interesting point of being in Formula One for the long haul. I want to bring this whole conspiracy theory of Mercedes, or maybe it's not a conspiracy theory, maybe it's really going to happen, of them perhaps leaving Formula One, only remaining as an engine supplier, and Mr. Lawrence Stroll buying the team and making that into the new Aston Martin team. Do you think that that's going to happen?
You know, where there's smoke, there's fire in Formula One. For many years, Barry, Formula One, you know, survived on tobacco, money, drama, and gossip. And now it's more fuel companies and drama. But Mercedes, one of those teams where you've got to believe that once they've achieved, I mean, what they've achieved over the last 6 years is extraordinary. It'll never, ever be done again, I don't believe, in the history of Formula One. And unfortunately, I think they are one of those teams that sit and say, okay, well, we've achieved everything. You know, let's move on. I think they will remain as a engine supplier in the world of Formula One, but I think they're going to get massive pressure from their shareholders as to where their futures are. If you look at what's happening around, Audi have dropped their DTM program. They're going more the electric way. A lot of people are going this electric way, and it's must be very worrying for the owners of Formula One. Will everyone be forced to go electric? I hope it doesn't happen, because I have my thoughts on electric power and its sustainability as well. So we got to look at that side. But I mean, there is a good chance that Mercedes might pull out and just become an engine supplier. And the big talk is that Lawrence Stroll might buy it. There's talk that Toto Wolff has already bought into the Aston Martin concern as well. So, you know, if you look at Red Bull have got two teams, Red Bull and AlphaTauri. Mercedes could have two teams. So Lawrence Stroll could buy Mercedes and have the full backing of Mercedes behind him. He's got his Force India or Racing Point team now, which is going to be Aston Martin. And he could have two teams and juggle them around as well, and have Toto Wolff overlooking both of the teams. Lawrence Stroll seems to be a very, very clever businessman. Toto Wolff is an exceptional businessman and a brilliant manager of whatever he does. So it sounds like a recipe for great success. We just have to wait and see. Having said that, I really would love Mercedes to stay in Formula One for the long haul as well.
Yeah. No, well, it's a very exciting year, 2 years that's laying ahead of us. We don't really know what's going to happen. But also speaking about this season, Formula One has laid out a proposal for the races that will be happening. Do you see as many races happening as they are suggesting, or do you think they're a bit tentative with, you know, the likes of the virus? They don't know if it might spring up again and make have a little second wave.
I think, you know, just as anything in the world at the moment, there's just a tremendous amount of theory. If this could happen if that happens, but this could stop if that stops. So I think Formula One have taken an incredibly brave decision in the way that they have been dealing with medical professionals, with various circuit owners, with various health organizations of other countries. They've done an incredible job and continue to do an incredible job to sit there and say, what is possible for us to go racing? And they've come out with this tentative calendar, which includes 2 races in Bahrain, 2 races in Austria, and 2 races in Silverstone. And then, of course, there are other Grand Prix as well, including Spa. Belgium have said they can go racing, but with no spectators. Italy. So the potential of them to go racing, of course, is possible, very, very possible. And from reading what the medical expert for Formula One and the FIA have come together, is sitting saying that the people will be in pockets and in little bubbles, and that's how they will monitor. So it'll be track and tracing. If somebody gets contracts the virus, from there they'll know exactly where that person has been, how they've been, and from there then they can isolate. So they've put everything in place for it to happen. So theoretically, yes, they can go racing. In practice, we'll have to just wait and see. We're about a month and a half away from when Austria should happen. So, I mean, that could be extremely exciting. And then, of course, the final point on that is, I lost my train of thought for a second, is... I can't remember. But in theory, yes, of course it can work, Barry. The last point is, I think it would be extremely weird for us as television viewers to all of a sudden watch races with no fans and the noise that goes around it. For us, it'll be weird. And I think equally for the world of Formula One, where they always have huge, huge crowds. Don't forget, it's only one of the few motorsports in the world that have massive crowds all of the time. Le Mans, of course, has it. NASCAR has usually very, very big crowds. But, you know, world endurance cars and GT racing don't really have big, big crowds. So for the drivers, it'll also be quite weird. And I wonder how that's going to affect their motivation. So I think we're in for a very, very interesting, peculiar 2020 season.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that the 2020 season actually happens. But Sasha, thank you so much. It's always enlightening and educational to to speak to you about Formula One. If people want to see all your stuff that you do with Formula One social media, where can they get hold of you?
Yeah, just everywhere. It's on F1 Sasha. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit, whatever. I'm not on Twitch, and I'm not on TikTok.
I think you need to start a F1 Sasha TikTok.
Yeah, I'll have to come up with some good content. Listen, the last point I want to make, Barry, is regarding Ferrari and their two drivers. I mean, this is the youngest driver pairing in 50 years that Ferrari are looking at. So it is risky. But, as I said right in the beginning, the world has changed. Things are completely different. There is no normal. We don't even know what the new normal is. So it might be a stroke of genius, or it might be, it might not work out. But sometimes you've got to take the risk to get the reward. So, good luck to everybody who's making changes. And let's hope we go racing this year and it's safe and nobody gets ill, and we can at least have some entertainment.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sasha. I'll put your links down below, so if people want to go follow you, they can absolutely do so. And you must have a fantastic rest of your weekend.
Thank you, my friend, and you too, Barry. Always lovely to chat to you.
Thank you. Keep well.
Ciao, ciao.